We have a fireside chat, the future of talent acquisition, innovative strategies for finding and retaining top talent. I would like to introduce our moderator, Mr. Ashish Banka, Head Human Capital and Talent Strategy, Cradlewise. Mr. Ashish Banka leads people and culture at Cradlewise Inc., a US-based tech-enabled baby crib manufacturer. With 15 plus years of HR leadership experience across various sectors, he is passionate about driving growth through HR strategies and also serve as a founder trustee and national president of HR Sampark, a non-profitable trust. So, I would also like to introduce our members right now for the fire chat. Mr. Pradipta Banerjee, Chief People Officers, Emids. Mr. Monarch Limaye, CHRO, Allstate, India. And last but definitely not the least, Mr. Hitesh Sehgal, Director, Global People Business Services, Abinbev. Can we please welcome them with a huge round of applause?
मुस्कुराइए, आप बैंगलोर में हैं। एक जोरदार गड़गड़ाहट से अपने आप को आप उत्तेजित कर दिया। राउंड ऑफ अप्लॉज फॉर योरसेल्फ। तो नमस्कार सभी को, नमस्कार ऑर्गेनाइजर्स को और नमस्कार सभी आमंत्रित अतिथिगण को हमारा आदर सत्कार करने के लिए। Thank you so much for welcoming us. I'm sorry Pradipta is not there. He will be joining us in a time, but I would take the charge of this. Thank you so much, Monarch and Hitesh, for coming over and doing this. While we were discussing upon this topic of talent acquisition and talent retention, मेरे को लगा कि tech recruiter का काम मेरे से ज़्यादा difficult है. Moderator job is much easier than a tech recruiter. And while we were thinking that how we can relate this to a learning collaboration so that जब आप यहाँ से जाएं तो ये सोचे कि कुछ सीख के आए थे, खाने के बाद वाला सेशन ऐसे भी बहुत डिफिकल्ट रहता है, नींद आती है, तो हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे कि आपको सोने ना दें। मैं चाहूँगा सबसे पहले मैं 2 लाइन अपने रिक्रूटर्स के लिए बोलना चाहूँगा, टेक रिक्रूटर्स के लिए, बिकॉज their journey is very difficult and I would like all of you to applaud after what I say, because they are base of the pyramid. Sometimes when we discuss strategies and all, end of the day their contribution sometimes get unnoticed. So उनकी हालत बहुत ख़राब है और वो बहुत दुख में रहते हैं। उनका दुख बयान करने के लिए मैं 2 लाइन बोलता हूँ। I am sorry if my Hindi is not so good, people who don't understand. I will explain you in English later. अजीब तरह से गुजर रही है ज़िंदगी, अजीब तरह से गुजर रही है ज़िंदगी, ए वक्त सोचा कुछ, किया कुछ, हुआ कुछ और मिला कुछ। So with this, I would request all of you to give a round of applause for our tech recruiters in our organizations. You know, while we were talking about talent acquisition and talent retention, I feel post and pre-pandemic, हमारा हालत आदि मानव और इंसान के रूप में हो गया है। हम लोग कभी भी किसी से मिलते हैं तो people say we have become better human beings. We were not animals earlier, right? But what we have done is we have understood that what needs to be done, what is humanity. People come back and say we are HR, resource. Come on guys, we are not resource, we are not table chairs. We are building human relationships. If you called a CHRO, you should call it Chief Human Relationship Officer. You should not call a resource. If you start looking at resources, then we will only look at objectives. So coming back with this, retention and coming back to our topic, Monarch and Hitesh, is that attrition is a big issue, which we all have noticed. And last year there was a bubble, high salaries, which is going down now, and it is coming to, as per the reports, it is showing that 22% was the attrition. It is going down to, in the next quarters, will go down to 16%. But my first question to you is, Monarch, because we are in order, so we will follow that, is the burning issue of retention and talent acquisition in this space of IT world specifically, because non-ITs are touch better, is that how the landscape of talent acquisition has evolved in recent years? Because most of us have seen your journey so far in varied organizations. And what are the key trends do you think will shape up the future.
Thanks, Ashish. Uh, Glad to be here. And I do hope by our discussions, you are able to keep yourself awake immediately post lunch. Good timing. Right. So, as to the question about the landscape of, let's say, organizations and talent acquisition that I have seen, you see, the job of a talent acquisition person, and maybe in HR. So I thought that Shero Shari was fit for HR professionals itself, right? Forget about talent acquisition only. Right? It has become more difficult and more easy at the same time. Because since quite some time I've been hearing other panel members discuss, and couple of words are being repeated again and again. And that precisely gives an idea of what the landscape is or how it is evolving. We all heard a couple of things. Couple of things. So, for example, first one in terms of trend. Now, look at multi-generational workforce. Now, this is the time at which we are. At least 4 different generations are coming together in an organization. Right? Millennials were the new ones, then Gen Z has come in, and Gen Z has just started coming into the workforce. So this is a time when you have 4 different generations working together in the same organization with different interests, different motivation, and different approaches to work. Right? And I'm not going into detail, but if you look at just basic difference in the new generation that I see that is coming in, there is a heavy leverage on learnability. There's a heavy leverage on employability. Rather than indexing more on lifetime employment, job security, more and more people that I come across in my interviews when we hire, people are only asking about what are the development opportunities available in the next 2 to 3. The discussion does not go beyond 2 to 3 years. So from a concept point of view, people are not even thinking about 5 years, 10 years. If that happens, great. But that's the shift that we are seeing when I talk about workforce. Because of that, the talent acquisition strategies and HR strategies to be able to retain people has to undergo a change. Right? That's one. Second trend that I am observing is, again, the nature of role itself is getting changed. Because of heavy digitalization and because of demand and supply gap coming in, more and more organizations in IT space, and you would have heard these terms being spoken about more and more now, skill-based organizations. So what is happening is organizations are looking at the role, they are looking at what are the skills required to do that role, and if I'm not able to fulfill that requirement right now, what are the adjacent skills I can look at with a 70 to 80% overlap, and then maybe I will upskill, retain, etc. So what that is doing is breaking down silos. It's a beginning, but it's a welcome change. Third thing is, again, we heard about digitalization a lot. Now, advanced technologies, AI, ML, what it is doing is very interesting. For the talent acquisition people, and that's where specifically for talent acquisition people I see, all of so-called non-value added job, which used to happen, which was the bread and butter, frankly. In a couple of years back, just for scheduling interviews, I used to have dedicated 2 or 3 people, right? So all of those repetitive tasks are being either optimized, automated, or eliminated because of tools, right? So what it changes into is your role as talent acquisition specialist is a talent advisor. More and more talent acquisition specialists are becoming talent advisor, and then there is a career path to becoming HR head and many more, right? And what it is doing for the organizations is, because of the technologies available, distances are disappearing, and that's where flexible work timings, gig economy, etc. is coming. These are the few key changes that I'm seeing to answer you.
So, Monarch, what you like to say that soch badlo, desh badlo, because you are trying to change the entire well-being of an individual and bringing automation, and that's how you are trying to look at the future trends of, because jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai, right? So let's come back to Hitesh. In this rapidly changing job market, can you talk about some innovative approaches towards talent acquisition and what organizations should do to get the best talent? Because this is a talent war. happening and everybody is trying to get the best people forward if they do not have the possibility to pay the best, but sabko best chahiye. So what is your takeaway on this?
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Before we go to, my view is that before we start looking at innovative ways, I think first I always look at, do we have the basics right in the organization, right, from a culture perspective. And when I talk about basics, that means what is our current engagement level in the organization? Because an employee or a candidate looking outside would definitely want to know that the organization that I'm trying to get into, what is the level of autonomy there? What is the level of engagement in that organization? What is the culture of that organization? And that really motivates when we look at going out in the market and starting interview the candidates. They feel really proud to be part of the company. So I think first we need to make sure as leaders that we are providing things like autonomy, engagement, right? The core principles of the company, which talks about the employee empowerment. Before we start looking at other ways to find right talent. And second is for sure, right? I also believe that one strategy does not work in all the areas, right? We need to adopt our strategy and try to innovate based on the business requirements. Because that really helps. So for example, it's been many years that we are investing huge in getting candidates from top institutes. But we also make sure that when they join a company, they are really equipped with the right empowerment, and we have the right projects that they really help them. It really helps them to come up that 6 or 7 months of learning curve. So I think these are, and the last one is also the development that we do for our employees, right? The learning and development investments that we do. So I think all these things that I just mentioned really has a positive impact if you go out in the market and look at getting the candidates for our company.
Thanks so much, Hitesh. I think you mentioned before that I speak less, but I mean depth. So thank you so much. But, I can relate what you said that specifically business has a requirement and people from startups will echo that whenever we go with any proposal, bhukhe pet to bhajan hota nahi hai. Any event ke liye paisa chahiye apne ko. And when we go to our CEOs and CFOs, they see with bloated eyes as if I've asked their kidneys. But coming back to, welcome Pradipta. And we are talking about talent acquisition. So while we are, there in the workforce becomes, the Emids is multi-generational, multi-dimensional, it's across. And when you work with resources or, the human resources which are across in a diverse background, and, the talent acquisition strategy is really difficult because a strategy for India might not work for US, or a strategy for Australia might not work for New Zealand. So in terms of this, diverse background and the nationalities, culture, people, thoughts are all complex things. These are not easy. So how do you feel that as a TA leader, a global TA leader should have the outlook to bind everything together?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting for this session. I think organizations' foundations, the purpose, the values, sort of stays constant regardless of which country or geography the organization is operating. What sort of is different, I guess, in different cultures and geographies is the action that demonstrate that value. So when you think about values, you don't see values, you don't touch values. Values are expressed through behaviors, and values are experienced through actions. So it's values, behaviors, and actions. So the actions and the behaviors are different as you operate in different countries and in different cultures. Similarly, as Monarch said earlier, because of multi-generational workforce being in the environment, the same value gets sort of manifested in different cultures and different generations in a different form or manner. In earlier days, let's pick one example. In earlier days, loyalty was like staying in a company for 20 years. I guess our parents sort of stayed with one organization for a long period of time, and that was a demonstration of loyalty. Today, it's not. Today, loyalty is about doing a good job for a particular assignment and then moving on if you want to. If it doesn't meet your purpose, if it doesn't meet your career goals, your aspirations, so on and so forth, right? So I think again, when you think about organizations and organizations construct, the foundational elements remains the same regardless of where you are and how you want to operate. But what changes is the manifestation of it or the behavioral or action part of it, depending on where you're operating.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Pradipta. So a leading question is, what is one top attribute of a TA leader, a global TA leader, would you see when he or she takes up into this role? What is that one attribute of a TA leader when he or she manages?
Very cliched, but sort of a global mindset, have a global mindset, but also be able to operate in a local environment, right? If you're hiring somebody and I guess all of you or some of you are TA leaders and know this and do this much more than I do, when you're hiring somebody in the US, it is fairly easy or certain that you will get somebody onboarded in 15, 20 days, because typically that's sort of a time frame. If you're hiring somebody in Germany, you need 3 months. If you're hiring somebody in India, you should take 3 months, right? So I think being able to understand what the local requirements are, at the same time, your purpose, like for example, Emids, we are a healthcare company. Our purpose is to benefit healthcare, is to drive good healthcare across humanity. That purpose doesn't change regardless of the fact where you're operating from, right? But a TA leader who is operating in Germany versus US will sort of have those differences. In India, we ask people what your current comp is, current salary is, and then based on that, we sort of decide what the next salary should be or what we should offer. In the US, it's a sacrilege if you call or ask somebody what's your salary is, right? So those are fundamental differences that remains based on cultures and geographies and legislations. Legislations play an important role. In Europe, legislation is very important and plays a different role. There are trade unions, worker councils. So you sort of operate in those constraints.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Pradipta. I think in the first half, what we talked about is, more importantly, is talent acquisition strategies. But the thing comes to my mind that why should we talk about talent acquisition unless there is a growth? I was speaking to Vikas and Yogeshji over before the event, and we were talking about that. Why should not we speak about talent retention? Because if we go to refill the positions or rehire the positions again and again, that's a waste of time. And if our talent retention strategies are robust enough, we would be able to build a better talent acquisition. And I should have started with that, but I started with talent acquisition just to feel comfortable. So जैसे बोलते हैं ना कि जब कोई समस्या करती है परेशान, तभी इंसान ढूंढता है उसका समाधान. So now let us focus and hear some ideas on talent retention. Talking about talent retention, I would be very curious and very happy to share with all of you about Cradlewise. So Cradlewise, the organization which I lead the people function as a worker, we are a tech product company having 100 people in India, and we manufacture a patented baby crib which makes babies sleep through AI interventions. In last 5 years, we have seen only 2 voluntary attritions. And when I joined last year, I got scared that why they are not leaving, my job will be under scanner. So I did a stay interview. And then it came back that I literally asked some of the few leaders that why you are not getting job outside. So tech leaders, people generally shift in 1 or 2 years. So they told that 3 things which came back, and that is why we are staying here. Very importantly, and this as people leaders, we should inculcate in our organization. The first was quality of work. The second was respect. As a techie, you should get that respect, not giving a kind of a pedestal approach, but respect. And the third thing was work-life harmony, not balance. You get enough time not to have a burnout and go spend time, pursue your hobbies, spend time with family. I think these were the things in Cradlewise which came forward. My question will start from here, and starting with Monarch to you, is DNI, specifically is a very loved topic for us, all of us people leaders. Can you tell how DNI is helping? See, we talk about DNI 10% present, that we have to have the workplace and all these things. But how does it impact the business? My question to is, does DNI impact the business? And if yes, can you share some examples that because of DNI, the retention has become better?
Yeah. Good. I think, first of all, DNI, so we have a habit when an idea whose time has come, right, you start seeing it replicated across organization. So if an idea comes, like DNI is not new, the thought was always there, and it started with some organization, and then like a wildfire, everyone started doing it. But more importantly, what organizations need to understand is that what is the objective with which you are doing it, right? Because right or wrong, everyone started thinking of diversity in terms of gender diversity, right? While diversity is a very relevant topic with multiple facets to it in US, they have race, they have color, creed, etc., etc. In India, we have always focused traditionally only on gender diversity, right? And rightly or wrongly so, right? You have almost 50-50%. But if it is not in your DNA, if you are not thinking about it in terms of what benefit it gives to the business, then it becomes an HR buzzword, right? And frankly speaking, at a foundation level, what are you trying to say? You are saying diversity of thoughts. A decision making of an organization always benefits with diverse thoughts coming together. And that's at the base of it. Whether it's gender diversity, whether it's location, whether it's language, you're just trying to bring different people on the same platform, right, to get better decision making. Right? In India, and I was talking to somebody in US, my counterpart, I was saying in India, when 5 people or 3 people meet together in a room, you have got diversity. You won't find more than 2 of them from the same location if you are talking about diversity in that. So again, what is the business outcome you are trying to drive, and purely what is the benefit that you get out of diversity? Second is the equity part of it, right? Again, it's not enough to say that we are equal opportunity employer, which practically every organization does, right? Because equity is more important than equality, and that's why you create spaces for the population or section which is underrepresented. And if an organization at the core of it understands that and follows it in true spirit, then other things become operational in terms of how do you bring it to execution.
Thank you so much, Monarch. I think बिना कुछ कहे भी आपने काफी कुछ कह दिया. So coming back to Hitesh, specifically the topic which you were talking about is in terms of AI, ML. And these are very important because everything what we do is not a software alone. It's everything what we do is helping us in our lives. Yep. Everything, right from a technology to a mobile phone to everything comes with AI. Our product is also an AI. But tell me how this AI is helping in retention. And if it does not come through a retention, when we go to a boardroom and our CEOs will ask that what is the numbers, and if we are giving just flowery talks, they will not buy in that. So tell me how does AI, ML, what is some interventions which you have come across in other organizations or maybe in yours, in a generic way that we as people leaders should embrace and adapt so that it helps us?
Yeah. I think right now if I look at AI, right, I find it is just a tip of the iceberg at this point of time, the way we are looking at. And if I foresee in the next 4 or 5 years, a lot of what we do in talent acquisition, and that's mainly from a hiring perspective, I see that almost 50 to 60% of what we do today in talent acquisition, I mean end to end, will be taken over and will be digitized, either automated. Because we have started to realize the power of data, right? We've started to realize what data can really help us. One of the things that we started to invest in as well is the attrition prediction, right? Looking at various components, seasonality, right? It is really showing us month over month what could be the potential attrition happening in the company. And based on that, our talent acquisition have started to invest time looking at and studying that data, starting to create a pipeline for the company. And that we've seen over the last 1 year really helped us to first also understand where exactly the attrition is happening, which our area, right? Either finance or commercial or people. We are expecting more attrition to happen so that our talent acquisition can gear up, right, to look at and start investing time in these areas. And second, I personally look at, trying to transform talent acquisition end to end, right? We need to also understand, like I was mentioning earlier, understanding the business requirements, right? So the time that requisition is raised, does it take like 20 days to just get approved, right? Can we just go ahead and look at, predict that I'm going to have a requisition raised in the next 1 month, so I start planning it already and have all the approvals there with us, so that we start working 15 to 20 days in advance. That reduces the overall cycle time for us to go out in the market and get the person onboarded. The second one is the sourcing, right? I think we have and we invested in tools like Skillet that really today helps us to understand, all right, and filters the profiles. So the team doesn't have to go through hundreds and 10,000s of profiles every day, right? We get a short list. Of course, like I was mentioning earlier, it's just the tip of the iceberg right now, because AI is also giving us certain percentage of accuracy, which I see increasing in the next 4 or 5 years. So I think the future really looks bright in terms of getting the right talent from the market based on AI, ML, and it's just a starting, according to me.
So what you say that if we do a right hire, he or she going to stay longer with us. But to the last question, and before I ask that question, I will ask you a difficult question, and pardon me for that. With all of
Earlier question was not difficult.
No, this is even more, and it will interest everybody. To honest to your heart, with your, with kind of experience which you have gone, a tech recruiter, how many years he or she should take to become a CHRO?
Well, the first question is whether he wants to become a CHRO. Right?
No, he wants to become, giving a condition that everything, matlab sab kuch kushal mangal hai.
Sab kuch kushal mangal. Well, it's a very hypothetical question, I guess. I guess a good one can become in 7-10 years. A bad one will take 20 years.
Okay. I leave it up to the entire audience to come and ask you, counter ask you. I am not going to defend them. But my question to this is the important aspect of becoming a chief human resource relationship officer is the skill which you possess while you talk to everybody, your humbleness, your aptitude, how are you looking at the situations and the problem statements and finding solutions of that. In an organization, there is a skill gap which is there. And retention and skill gap go hand in hand, because today if we don't work on our skill gaps, tomorrow it will become redundant, and when we'll say we are laying off or giving you a pink slip. As good organizations or good people leaders, what we should do, 3-4 things to manage this skill gap and ensure that our retention is getting positively impacted for future.
I think this is a more difficult question than the earlier question. I think all organizations want to retain and nurture talent. I mean, no organization goes out and hire saying, "Aaj hire kar raha hu, tomorrow I'll throw him out." I don't think that sadistic view or approach is there with any organization. And yet, we see those eventualities happen. And if we sort of peel the onion and think about why those happen, I think it's 2 or 3 things. One is the organization is planned badly. There has been no planning to think about what happens 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months away. And as CHROs and as HR folks, not necessarily CHROs, and talent folks, I think we have an important and a position to sort of push and influence people to plan accurately. I mean, those of you who are in the talent acquisition space, you would realize how important it is to plan. Because if you have lost first 7 days once a requisition is raised, there is no way in hell you will be able to get back those 7 days, how much ever work you put in the next 7 days, right? So planning is important. Planning is important in every aspect of life. Obviously, planning is important in running of an organization. So I think as HR, as talent leaders, if we can put ourselves in the planning of the organization to understand the talent plan of the organization, then I think we can be in a better place than where we are today. So that's number one. Number two, and this is going to be a little bit sort of a negative connotation, but and means no harm. I think we sort of think about organization as a monolithic, homogeneous structure. They are not. Organizations are heterogeneous. There are different kinds of people, there are different technologies, there are different competence, there are different levels, there are different human beings, so on and so forth. We try to look at it in a homogeneous structure and think one size fits everyone or everything kind of stuff. If we as talent leaders sort of dig a little deeper and try and figure out the segments within the organization, there are some segments where individuals are motivated enough to pick up the next job, next role, learn by themselves and do things for themselves. There are some who just doesn't know where they belong and they're still trying to figure things out. There are some who needs to be pushed. There are some who needs to be beaten up, within inverted commas. Yeah. So I think as talent leaders, if we can figure that out, we can then sort of customize solutions for different sets of people. And we tend not to do it because it's more hard, it takes longer time, it takes a lot more effort, so on and so forth. And then third is about influencing our leaders to do the right thing, right? As talent leaders, as HR leaders, as talent acquisition leaders, wherever we are, I think our biggest responsibility is the style, not the substance. We all have the substance, that's why we are where we are. We have our jobs because we have the substance. What we need to do more is on the style. Help and influence our leaders to take the right decisions. And I think that's a big area of, or an opportunity for all of us to play up.
Thank you so much, Pradipta. I think really apt. We are also running short on time and we don't want to hear the bell because we are good students. So please come back to us in case if you have questions, connect us on social media. We are happy to build that relationship. I'll just sum up this entire session in 4 lines. Is past is experience, present is experiment, and future is expectations. Let's use our past experience in our experiment currently to achieve our expectations. Thank you so much for a patient listening और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सभी का यहाँ पे. Thank you. We are on time, but the organizers are, they're saying how they are on time.
Thank you so much, moderator and the panelists. I request Mr. Kamal Sadia to do the honors. I request Mr. Kamal to do the honors by felicitating Mr. Ashish Banka. I request Mr. Kamal to do the honors by felicitating Mr. Monarch. I request Mr. Kamal to felicitate Mr. Pradipta. And last but not the least, I request Mr. Kamal to felicitate Mr. Hitesh Sehgal.